we can solve the mystery beyond doubt of who this skeleton actually is. None other than Cleopatra's sister, Arsinoe, Egyptian rebel, Queen of Egypt.
DNA of Cleopatra has finally been analyzed, and what it revealed is terrifying. For more than 2,000 years, the name Cleopatra has echoed through history with a power few figures have ever matched. She has been remembered as a queen, a strategist, a seductress, a scholar, and a survivor. Entire civilizations have risen and fallen since her death, yet fascination with her life remains as strong as ever. Historians continue to debate her appearance, her personality, her political ambitions, and even her ancestry. The truth is that much of what people think they know about Cleopatra comes from stories written long after her death, often by individuals who never met her. Some portrayed her as a dangerous temptress capable of manipulating the most powerful men in Rome, while others described her as a brilliant ruler whose intelligence allowed her to survive in one of the most dangerous political environments in history. Yet despite centuries of research, one mystery continues to overshadow all others. What if modern science could reveal the biological truth hidden behind the legend? What if the secrets buried within Cleopatra's bloodline could finally be uncovered? The idea of analyzing Cleopatra's DNA has captured the imagination of millions because DNA has the power to answer questions that historians have debated for generations. It could potentially reveal information about ancestry, health, inherited traits, and family relationships. Although Cleopatra's remains have never been conclusively discovered and no verified DNA from the queen has ever been analyzed, the possibility of such a discovery continues to inspire intense speculation. The reason is simple. Cleopatra belonged to one of the most unusual royal families in history, a dynasty whose traditions may have created a biological mystery every bit as fascinating as the political drama for which they became famous. The story begins nearly 3 centuries before Cleopatra was born, when Alexander the Great conquered Egypt and established one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. After Alexander's death, his empire fractured into competing kingdoms controlled by his former generals. One of those generals, Ptolemy, seized Egypt and established the Ptolemaic dynasty. Although the Ptolemies ruled Egypt for generations, they were not ethnically Egyptian. They were Macedonian Greeks who maintained many of their ancestral customs while governing one of the world's most ancient civilizations. Over time, preserving their royal bloodline became a central concern. To protect their power and maintain control of the throne, the Ptolemies frequently arranged marriages within their own family. Brothers married sisters, uncles married nieces, cousins married cousins, and generation after generation, the royal family became increasingly interconnected. To the rulers themselves, this practice appeared logical. They believed it preserved the purity of their dynasty and prevented outsiders from gaining influence. Yet modern genetics paints a far more troubling picture. Scientists now understand that repeated marriages between close relatives increase the likelihood of harmful recessive genes being inherited by children. Over multiple generations, these risks can become increasingly severe, leading to a phenomenon known as inbreeding depression. In some royal dynasties throughout history, excessive inbreeding has been linked to physical deformities, infertility, developmental disorders, and shortened life expectancy. This raises a fascinating question. If the Ptolemies practiced such extensive intermarriage, what impact might it have had on Cleopatra herself? The possibility has fascinated historians, geneticists, and medical researchers alike. Cleopatra was not remembered as a weak or ineffective ruler. On the contrary, she was one of the most capable leaders of the ancient world. Ancient sources suggest she spoke multiple languages, possessed an extraordinary education, and demonstrated remarkable political skill. She successfully navigated civil wars, foreign invasions, economic crises, and shifting alliances among Rome's most powerful figures. Such accomplishments seem inconsistent with the image of a ruler crippled by hereditary decline. Yet the mystery remains because we lack direct evidence. Without Cleopatra's remains, no one can definitively determine whether she inherited genetic vulnerabilities associated with centuries of dynastic intermarriage. Some researchers argue that she may have been exceptionally fortunate, inheriting relatively few harmful genetic combinations despite her family's history. Others suggest that the dangers of Ptolemaic inbreeding may have been exaggerated because the family tree remains incomplete and several maternal lineages are uncertain. The truth is that modern scholars can only speculate. Nevertheless, the possibility that Cleopatra carried hidden hereditary risks adds another layer of intrigue to an already remarkable life. One reason this question remains so compelling is that history offers examples of other royal dynasties whose commitment to bloodline purity produced devastating consequences. The Habsburg dynasty of Europe is perhaps the most famous example. Generations of intermarriage among close relatives resulted in increasingly severe health problems. The most notable case was Charles II of Spain, whose extensive inbreeding contributed to a range of physical and developmental issues. Historians often cite the Habsburgs as a cautionary example of what can happen when genetic diversity is repeatedly reduced over many generations. Some scholars have wondered whether the Ptolemies may have experienced similar challenges. Ancient descriptions of certain Ptolemaic rulers mention obesity, physical weakness, and unusual behavior. While such accounts must be interpreted carefully, because ancient authors frequently exaggerated flaws for political reasons, they nevertheless raise intriguing possibilities. Could some of these descriptions reflect genuine hereditary conditions? Could Cleopatra have inherited some of the same vulnerabilities? Without DNA evidence, no definitive answer exists, yet the questions continue to inspire debate. The mystery becomes even more fascinating when we consider Cleopatra's extraordinary achievements. Unlike many rulers who inherited stable kingdoms, Cleopatra faced relentless threats from the moment she entered politics. After the death of her father, she became embroiled in a struggle for power involving rival factions within the royal court. Political enemies sought to remove her from authority, forcing her into exile and eventually civil war. It was during this period that Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt, setting the stage for one of history's most famous alliances. Ancient accounts describe Cleopatra arranging a secret meeting with Caesar, an encounter that dramatically altered the course of her life. With Roman support, she regained control of Egypt and secured her position on the throne. Yet even after achieving victory, her challenges were far from over. The Roman world itself was descending into chaos, and Cleopatra would soon find herself entangled in events that reshaped the Mediterranean. Following Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra aligned herself with Mark Antony, another powerful Roman leader. Their partnership became legendary, inspiring countless stories, paintings, books, and films. Yet behind the romance lay political necessity. Egypt required protection from external threats, while Antony needed resources to support his ambitions. Together they formed an alliance that challenged the growing power of Octavian, the future Augustus. The conflict ultimately culminated in the Battle of Actium, where Antony and Cleopatra suffered a decisive defeat. Within a year, both were dead, and Egypt became a Roman province. The independent kingdom that had existed for centuries disappeared forever. Yet Cleopatra's death marked the beginning of something unexpected. Rather than fading into obscurity, she became one of history's most enduring legends. Part of that legend revolves around the mystery of her appearance. Popular culture has often portrayed Cleopatra as the ultimate symbol of beauty, but historical evidence paints a more complicated picture. Coins minted during her reign depict a woman with a strong nose, prominent chin, and distinctive features that differ significantly from modern beauty standards. Ancient writer Plutarch suggested that Cleopatra's appearance alone was not extraordinary. Instead, he emphasized her intelligence, charm, conversational ability, and personal presence. According to Plutarch, it was her voice, wit, and charisma that captivated those around her. This observation has led many historians to conclude that Cleopatra's power stemmed less from physical beauty and more from intellectual brilliance. If future DNA analysis ever became possible, it might reveal traits that challenge centuries of artistic interpretation. The queen celebrated as history's greatest beauty might instead emerge as a woman whose influence rested primarily on intelligence and personality. The search for Cleopatra's tomb represents one of archaeology's most exciting ongoing investigations. For decades, researchers have attempted to locate her final resting place. Among the most prominent theories is the possibility that Cleopatra was buried at Taposiris Magna, an ancient temple complex west of Alexandria. Excavations at the site have uncovered coins bearing Cleopatra's image, statues, underground chambers, and numerous artifacts, suggesting a connection to the royal family. Each discovery generates international headlines because the implications are enormous. If Cleopatra's tomb were found and her remains positively identified, it could provide an unprecedented opportunity for scientific study. Researchers could examine skeletal evidence, reconstruct aspects of her appearance, investigate health conditions, and potentially recover ancient DNA. Such a discovery would rank among the most significant archaeological breakthroughs in modern history. Ancient DNA research has transformed our understanding of the past. Scientists have reconstructed the genomes of Neanderthals, identified ancient migrations, traced family relationships across thousands of years, and uncovered evidence of long-forgotten diseases. These achievements demonstrate the remarkable power of genetic analysis. Yet recovering DNA from ancient remains is an extraordinarily difficult process. Time, heat, moisture, contamination, and environmental conditions all contribute to the degradation of genetic material. After more than 2,000 years, any surviving DNA would likely exist only in tiny fragments requiring advanced technology to recover and analyze. Even then, success would not be guaranteed. Nevertheless, scientific techniques continue to improve, making discoveries possible today that would have seemed impossible only decades ago. This is why the prospect of analyzing Cleopatra's DNA remains so compelling despite the immense challenges involved. Another reason the subject attracts such intense interest is that Cleopatra's ancestry has become a topic of ongoing debate. Historians generally agree that the Ptolemies were of Macedonian Greek origin, but uncertainty surrounding certain maternal lineages has left room for speculation. Without direct genetic evidence, discussions about Cleopatra's ancestry often rely on incomplete historical records and competing interpretations. DNA analysis could potentially clarify some of these questions, though many uncertainties would likely remain. The broader significance of such research extends beyond Cleopatra herself. Understanding her genetic background could provide valuable insights into the populations, migrations, and cultural interactions that shaped the ancient Mediterranean world. Yet perhaps the most intriguing possibility involves health. What hereditary conditions, if any, existed within the Ptolemaic dynasty? Did generations of intermarriage leave a measurable biological impact? Was Cleopatra affected by genetic vulnerabilities hidden beneath her public image? Historians have proposed numerous theories, ranging from metabolic disorders to endocrine conditions, but none can be proven without direct evidence. The fascination lies not merely in discovering whether Cleopatra suffered from a particular illness, but in understanding how she achieved so much despite whatever challenges she may have faced. Her accomplishments remain extraordinary regardless of her biological circumstances. She governed a powerful kingdom, negotiated with Rome's greatest leaders, and left a legacy that continues to captivate humanity more than 20 centuries later. Ultimately, Cleopatra's enduring appeal stems from the intersection of history, mystery, and possibility. She lived at a pivotal moment when ancient Egypt confronted the rising power of Rome. She stood at the crossroads of cultures, languages, and civilizations. Her decisions influenced the fate of kingdoms and altered the course of history. Yet despite all we know about her achievements, enormous gaps remain in our understanding. We do not know where she was buried. We cannot say with certainty what she looked like. We cannot confirm which stories about her are true and which are exaggerations. Most importantly, we cannot examine the biological evidence that might answer some of history's most persistent questions. For now, Cleopatra remains suspended between myth and reality, a figure simultaneously familiar and unknowable. Perhaps one day archaeologists will uncover her tomb. Perhaps scientists will recover genetic material capable of revealing new truths about her life. Until then, the mystery endures. The queen who fascinated Caesar, challenged Rome, and ruled Egypt continues to guard her secrets, leaving future generations to wonder what astonishing revelations may still lie hidden beneath the sands of time.